Coming up on the Rockbridge Report, Rockbridge County is in the middle of budget season. We'll tell you why there is a nearly $2 million gap. Video footage of the Russian fighter jet downing the American drone was declassified. We'll bring you the latest. Storms rage on in California. We'll update you on what this record rainfall could mean for the drought-stricken state. Now on the Rockbridge Report.
Live from the campus of Washington and Lee University with news for Rockbridge County, this is the Rockbridge Report.
Welcome to the Rockbridge Report. I'm Vivek Kumar.
And I'm Carly Snyder. 7 Virginia deputies and 3 hospital employees were charged with second-degree murder after the death of a man in police custody. Local officials described the incident as a, quote, horrible miscarriage of justice. John Lawrence reports.
These 7 deputies with the Henrico County Sheriff's Office were arrested and charged with second-degree murder Tuesday morning. They're accused of being responsible for the death of Ervo Otinio on March 6th. 3 days earlier, on Friday the 3rd, Henrico police responded to a burglary call and placed the 28-year-old Otinio under an emergency custody order. Officers say they took Otinio to a local hospital for further evaluation and later arrested him. The deputies told investigators after he allegedly became physically combative. On March 6th, Henrico County Sheriff's deputies brought Otinio to Central State Hospital to admit him as a patient. A few hours after arrival, state police called for a death investigation. Investigators were told Otinio became combative and had to be restrained and eventually died during the process. Henrico County Sheriff Alyssa Gregory issued a statement that called Otinio's death a tragedy and said that her department is cooperating fully with the investigation of the Virginia State Police. The deputies are all being held without bond and are expected to appear in front of a grand jury on March 21st. I'm John Lawrence reporting.
The Office of Chief Medical Examiner in Richmond's preliminary report says Otinio's cause of death was asphyxiation from being smothered. A lawyer representing his family says the public will be disturbed when the facts of the case are made known. The Commonwealth's attorney says additional charges and arrest are pending.
We now have footage of Tuesday's encounter between a U.S. surveillance drone and a Russian fighter jet. U.S. European Command released the newly declassified video, which lasted about 30 to 40 minutes. It shows the MQ-9 Reaper drone's tail and propeller as it flies over the Black Sea. Then a Russian fighter jet approaches. As it draws closer, the aircraft dumps fuel on the drone. Another portion of the video shows the jet making a second pass and dumping fuel again. The video is then disrupted as the jet collides with the drone. With the drone damaged, operators flew it down into international waters off the coast of Crimea. 2 U.S. officials say the operators remotely wiped sensitive software to mitigate the risk of secret materials falling into enemy hands.
Since Silicon Valley Bank collapsed last week, many depositors have been yanking their money out of small banks and putting it into accounts at bigger banks like Wells Fargo and Bank of America. Former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers says Americans can trust that the recent banking issues are not a signal of something worse to come.
I don't think this is a time for panic or alarm. This is not 2008, where people needed to be worried about whether they could get their money from the ATM machine.
The House Financial Services Committee wants to learn more about the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. The chair of the committee, North Carolina Representative Patrick McHenry, says he is planning to call a hearing on the issue.
My responsibility as chair of the Financial Services Committee to get to the bottom of what happened. Then we can decide on the path forward. And there are a number of different theories here. There's a management failure, a supervisory or regulatory failure, a failure of regulation, a failure of law, and then the bigger question that we're all experiencing, the average American family is experiencing, and anyone who owns anything is experiencing, is inflation.
McHenry says consequences for SVB's executives should be on the table if the committee determines mismanagement led to the failure.
A federal judge in Texas is hearing the biggest abortion case since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. The ruling could impact access to abortion pills nationwide. Caitlin Johnson reports.
A lawsuit filed on behalf of anti-abortion advocates and doctors is asking the court to revoke or suspend the drug's approval. U.S. District Judge Matthew Kaczmarek is presiding over the case in Amarillo. Wednesday, plaintiffs argued the drug can cause irreparable harm to women and girls and to the doctors who have to surgically attend to them when the medical abortion does not take. They also accuse the FDA of deregulating the way the drug itself is handled, from several physician visits to receive the drug on the back and front end of the take-home abortion regimen to just one-person visit, and then the drug can be delivered by mail. They have asked for a preliminary halt of sales of the drug and its generic form, Mifeprex. The attorney for Danco Laboratories, the makers of Mifeprex, told the court any injunction put in place would cause the company irreparable harm they could not recover from. Attorneys for President Biden's administration cited they were unable to find any case where a court, quote, second-guessed FDA's safety and efficacy determination, end quote. Lawyers also said the safety of the drug has proven itself time and again over a span of 2 decades, citing its success rate at over 97% and hospitalizations at less than 1%.
Rockbridge County is in the middle of its annual budget season. That's when departments submit their wish list for funding. But it's up to the county's Board of Supervisors to do the reality check. This time around, they're trying to figure out how to close a $1.9 million gap in the county's draft budget for the upcoming year. The shortage mainly comes from rising costs across the county's public schools, fire and rescue department, and sheriff's office. The Board of Supervisors must close the gap by May.
The city of Lexington wants to change its law surrounding how residents can rent extra spaces on their property. For months, people like Mirabai McLeod have complained. The code allows only homeowners to rent out extra spaces on their property, like a garage, if there's an adjoining wall to the main house. Councilmember Leslie Strong says she hopes the code will be changed to help people like McLeod while minimizing the impact on their neighbors.
For us, it's important to come up with a regulation that allows people to do what they like, but also make sure that it doesn't negatively impact their neighbors or the neighborhood, the character of the neighborhood.
Strong says she hopes to get feedback from the public on the new code in May. Visit rockbridgereport.wlu.edu to read Andrew Arnold's full story.
Buena Vista city officials were prepared to throw the book at the Buena Vista Public Library. Stick around to hear the solution these two groups reached.
Storms continue to pound Northern California. We'll bring you the latest on how the floods could impact our nation's food supply.
A record number of households signed up for Boxerwood Nature Center's 10-week composting project. We'll share how the Lexington environmental nonprofit fills a community need.
Protests continued in Tel Aviv today against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's plan to overhaul the country's judicial system. Israelis took to the street for an 11th week to protest plans by Netanyahu's government to allow parliament to overturn Supreme Court decisions. The plan would also give his parliamentary coalition the final say over all judicial appointments. Yesterday, Israel President Isaac Herzog unveiled his proposed compromise on reforms for Israel's judiciary while warning in an impassioned speech the country was on the brink of a civil war. But the plan was rejected. Protesters pledged to block highways and roads.
Buena Vista officials and the local library board have resolved their differences, but it wasn't easy. We turn to our reporter, Jack Hunter, who is live at the Buena Vista Public Library with the latest on the library's potential return to Magnolia Avenue. Jack?
Hey, Carly. The public library moved out of its Magnolia Avenue building in January over fears that the building was not safe. City officials accused the library of breaking a contract. But now the library is set to move back in after an engineer declared the building safe for patrons.
Buena Vista Library branch manager Elena Scovera remembers being told by the Public Works Department that she needed to leave the Magnolia Avenue building immediately if she saw brick dust in the air.
I was told to my face, if you see dust falling from the ceiling, get out.
She and others who worked there heeded the warning in January. Over the next few weeks, the library staff packed up and moved some books, computers, and shelving into a building connected to St. John's United Methodist Church a couple of blocks away. The Magnolia Avenue building was built in the late 1800s. It had served as City Hall, a courthouse, and a jail. The first floor floods after a hard rainfall. The lighting is poor. The library staff stopped using the second and third floors years ago because of their poor conditions. City officials weren't happy when they found out that the library board had abandoned the Magnolia Avenue building.
What they did in this situation is they just moved without talking to us at all.
The city spends almost $150,000 a year to fund the library. It also must provide and maintain a building for the library as a part of the contract signed in 2019. The city hired comprehensive construction services to inspect the Magnolia Avenue building. An engineer told the city, from what he could see, he doesn't believe the structure poses any significant danger to the public. But library officials say they were concerned about the thoroughness of the inspection.
It doesn't really ease my mind.
In his report, the engineer said the inspection was limited to what he could see by peering through the foundation vents and by looking through a small periscope. He said the inspection was not intended to be a complete evaluation of the building's structural condition.
We would never want to have anybody go into a building that was unsafe.
On February 23rd, the library board held a meeting. City officials arrived late, angry that they had been told the meeting was in Lexington. It was in Buena Vista.
Well, actually, it was horrible.
Ultimately, the library board relented.
The reason the board decided to move back was partially to avert the threats.
Mayor Bill Fitzgerald denied that the city threatened the library board.
Well, we didn't say, but what would have happened is their funding would stop because they broke the contract.
City officials and library representatives have now agreed to meet once a month to discuss the building.
Regional Library Director Julie Goyette told me that on March 21st, both locations will be closed as the library starts to move items back into this Magnolia Avenue building behind me. She also said that some children's events will still be held at the church. Kearney says that that is okay with the city. Reporting from downtown Buena Vista, I'm Jack Hunter with the Rockbridge Report.
Jack. Rockbridge County Public Schools kicked off an alternative education program this school year that helps students who struggle to learn in traditional classrooms. There are 36 high school students who are divided into 3 groups. One classroom helps students who have behavioral issues. Another targets children who suffer from anxiety. Students with learning disabilities are placed in the 3rd class. School officials say the program has helped improve attendance. They say they hope it will raise the graduation rate.
Rockbridge County has limited opportunities to practice environmentally sustainable methods like composting or recycling. A Lexington environmental nonprofit wants to fill that need. Teddy Jacobson has the story.
Buena Vista resident McKenna Whiting is taking advantage of Boxerwood Nature Center's Backyard Compost Challenge to nourish her family's backyard garden.
I think it will be really good for my kids to kind of get a better idea of food waste and being able to reuse that into something, beneficial.
Whiting's family is one of a record number of households that Boxerwood Nature Center is reaching this spring for its 3rd annual Backyard Compost Challenge. The environmental nonprofit recruited 100 households to participate in the 10-week project. Families picked up their composters last Saturday.
Anytime we can reuse things instead of throw them away and add to the landfill, it's awesome, especially when it can be turned into something that can benefit your garden to grow more things. It's just a more sustainable way of living.
Boxerwood educator Madeline Fuentes says the organization received a $14,000 grant from the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality to buy the composters that participants got for free. Fuentes says almost 100% of participants still use their composters a year after finishing the project.
It makes them realize about their consumption habits in general, how much can't be composted or recycled, and it brings a broader awareness to things that need to change.
Fuentes says families that participated last year found uses for over 4,000 pounds of food waste that would have wound up in the local landfill. Fred Dudley, the site manager at Rockbridge County Landfill, says he would like to see more households compost because that waste takes up unnecessary space in the landfill.
You reduce the life of your landfill, and we want it to last as long as possible.
Fuentes says many of the families participating in the composting challenge come from Enderley Heights Elementary School in Buena Vista. She says Boxerwood is also working with the school to help set up its own composting system. For the Rockbridge Report, I'm Teddy Jacobson.
Coming up next, doctors at Northwestern Medicine in Chicago gave 2 cancer patients a new lease on life. Find out what the cutting-edge treatment entailed.
It might be 60 and sunny in Lexington here today, but tomorrow's going to look a lot different. Find out more with my forecast coming up.
For several local restaurants, farm fresh ingredients are always on the table. Find out how this practice benefits diners and the restaurants they frequent.
Welcome back to the Rockbridge Report.
The impact of ongoing storms in California could trickle down to the prices at your local grocery store. California is the leading agricultural producer in the U.S., and many of the state's key growing areas are flooded. Shelley Malashi has the story.
Blow to our nation's top crop producer. The recent back-to-back storms hitting California's critical agricultural regions may also impact the U.S. food supply.
The pain is going to be prolonged for many weeks and months. This should have been the beginning of the harvest season.
The relentless rain is flooding crops, evacuating farm worker communities, and delaying the harvest season. California is the golden state of food production. It produces the majority of some specialty crops, like certain fruits and vegetables in the country.
In January's storm events, we had over 15,000 acres that were impacted by flooding and inundation, with over $330 million worth of farm losses.
Ag officials in hard-hit Monterey County say it's unclear when planting schedules will resume, and all the flooded farms and delayed harvests could lead to higher costs for consumers nationwide. That's if supplies tighten and produce distributors turn to Mexico or other regions to make up for shortages and then pass on the added cost to consumers. Ag officials say it's too early to fully assess the damage, but are working to mitigate the long-term impact.
There will be more crop losses as areas that have not experienced flooding now are now experiencing it for the first time.
In Monterey County, the severe weather has forced farm workers out of their homes and left them without jobs.
This community of Pajaro is mostly low-income Latino farm workers, and this is the worst thing that could have happened to them right now.
For Consumer Watch, I'm Shelley Malashi.
However, here in Lexington, we had another beautiful spring day. Let's take a look at the local forecast. Currently here in Lexington, we had a nice glimpse of warm weather once again after quite the cold week we've had so far, with the high of 64. The low of tonight is 40 degrees. The barometric pressure is currently sitting at 30.09 inches. Winds picking up here a little bit this evening at 12 miles per hour with a gust up to 17 miles per hour. However, humidity is remaining pretty low at 13%. Now, looking at the radar with the beautiful day we had today, we can see that there's no precipitation here in the area. However, the rains out west are expected to reach us and trickle in early tomorrow morning. Looking regionally here in Lexington and Buena Vista are both 61 degrees. Up north, Stanton is currently 60 degrees. Over to the east, Charlottesville is a little bit warmer at 64 degrees, while down south in Lynchburg is currently 63 degrees. Looking to the west, Covington's a little bit brisker at 52 degrees, while Roanoke is currently 61. Now for the 5-day forecast, tomorrow we will have the warmer weather remain with a high of 61 degrees, but rain will kind of trickle in throughout the morning and into the evening, and even a chance of snow tomorrow night when the low drops to 32 overnight. Over the weekend, the sun will return, but temperatures will drop. Saturday, the precipitation will move out of the area, and the sun will return with a high of 50 degrees, but low of 19. Sunday, temperatures will drop even more with a high of 39 degrees and low of 18. Monday is our first official day of spring. However, it won't quite feel like it with a high of only 49 and low of 25. But Tuesday, the temperatures will climb once again up to 54 and low of 30. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Sarah. This is Albert Corey and Tanaz Ameli. They were both diagnosed with lung cancer that quickly escalated to stage 4. At that point, treatment options were limited. They both needed new lungs. But double lung transplants are rare because of the risk and fear that the cancer could come back. Doctors at Northwestern Medicine in Chicago tried a different technique. They did a full heart and lung bypass that allows them to stop the blood flow to the heart and lungs and prevent any cancer cells from going into the bloodstream. Corey had his surgery in September of 2021. Ameli had hers in July 2022. Ameli says life since receiving the treatment is like experiencing rebirth.
Every morning when I open my eyes, I just can't believe it. And life has different meaning now.
Virginia basketball teams began their championship journeys today in the first round of March Madness. We'll bring you the scores.
Stick around after our newscast. Reporter Teddy Jacobson interviewed Sherry McKinney-France. She's the CEO of Blue Ridge CASA, a national association that supports and promotes court-appointed advocates for abused or neglected children. Advocates produce detailed reports for judges.
Really gives the judge a picture, a very clear picture of where this child is in all of their life domains.
Welcome back. So I don't know about you guys, I didn't make a March Madness bracket, but all of my friends who did take it so seriously.
Oh yeah, it's like a festival to them. Did you hear the cheering after the first March Madness game?
I am afraid my bracket is already busted, but that is not going to stop me from enjoying the rest of the tournament. Let's get into it. March Madness began for the fourth-seeded UVA men's basketball team earlier today. In an unbelievable final few seconds, the Furman Paladins clawed out a win over the Cavaliers in a 68-67 nail-biter. This marks the first upset of the NCAA men's basketball tournament. March Madness for D1 women's basketball also begins this week. Virginia Tech earned the #1 seed in the tournament for the first time in program history. The Hokies will take on the Chattanooga Mocs at home tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. Yesterday, Washington and Lee's men's swimming team entered the pool for the start of the NCAA Division III championship. Dalton Jobe broke both the WNL and conference record in the 200-meter individual medley with a time of 1 minute 50.11 seconds. This performance beat the previous record by over 1.5 seconds. The WNL women's lacrosse team demolished Catholic University on the road in a 12-6 win on Saturday. The Generals currently stand undefeated with a second-place ranking in the division. In other news, the VMI Keydets baseball team lost to James Madison University 9-3 last night. VMI's women's water polo traveled to Irvine, California to battle Westcliff University last night, but fell to the Warriors 18-10. Spring athletics are kicking into gear. Keep an eye out for some great matchups along the way. That's all for sports. Back to you, Carly.
Lexington restaurants offer a range of farm-fresh ingredients in the dishes they serve. The restaurants receive daily shipments from local farms in Rockbridge County. Ryan Raich has the story.
Restaurants in downtown Lexington boast about offering farm-to-table entrees. Haywood's, Bistro on Main, Pure Eats, Southern Inn, and the Red Hen all receive fresh ingredients weekly from local Rockbridge County farms. Pure Eats has a direct connection to a farm. General Manager Casey Potter's husband is one of the owners of Buffalo Creek Beef in Lexington, the main meat supplier for Pure Eats and the Southern Inn.
I know about the farm. I know that there are no steroids, no antibiotics. They're grass-fed, grain-finished, things like that. So I know that there's nothing bad going into these, cows that we're serving.
From 7 a.m. to 2 p.m., Monday through Saturday, Haywood's restaurant in Lexington becomes Seasons Yield at Haywood's. Breakfast and lunch are the key meals. Seasons Yield Farm in Rafine supplies the baked goods and chicken on a daily basis.
All of our pastries are baked fresh every morning at our farm in Rafine, as well as our sourdough breads, which are baked in a wood-fired oven, and our fresh milled wheat is actually milled on site at the farm as well.
Reed says customers appreciate farm-fresh ingredients and products.
I think people really like the idea of knowing where their food comes from, knowing that it was raised responsibly, and that there aren't a ton of added chemicals, preservatives, that sort of thing.
This summer, Seasons Yield will offer fresh barbecue from the hogs raised on their farm in Rafine. For the Rockbridge Report, I'm Ryan Raich.
That's it for the Rockbridge Report. Good night.